ISIS-controlled territory is shrinking in Syria, and the U.S. president is declaring a military victory over the terrorist group. But there is another front growing in West Africa. A group known as ISWAP, the Islamic State West Africa province, is expanding its territory in northeast Nigeria and surrounding countries. I spoke with Drew Hinshaw, a reporter for the Wall Street Journal who's been covering the rise of this new group. He joined us from Warsaw, Poland last weekend via Skype. Let's talk about the growth of ISIS in West Africa, or they call themselves ISWAP. Who are they?
Yeah, thanks for having me. ISWAP is a faction of Boko Haram, or was a faction of Boko Haram that split for a bunch of reasons. One of which is they felt that Boko Haram was just far too brutal on the civilian population, uh, torching villages, all the kind of things you would read about a few years ago, sending young children as suicide bombers. They had tactical advice from ISIS. Even ISIS thought that Boko Haram was too brutal, to the uncivilian friendly, and that's coming from ISIS. And so ISIS basically sent a series of letters to the Nigerian group that wanted to break away from Boko Haram and kind of laid out a theology that would be much more civilian friendly, the kind of things that guerrilla groups all around the world have tried to do, to befriend the local population and mesh yourself with the village, make it safe for people to come back to their farms and trade. I don't want to paint a totally, you know, picture of this ISIS group as if they're civilian friendly, because they've also, you know, committed their own massacres, but they're compared to Boko Haram, have been just much more better at the game of winning civilian support and creating a local population that doesn't mind them.
And your reporting points out that they are gaining territory and they're actually making strategic wins and defeating standing military bases.
That's right. I think they've overrun 14. Last time we did a count or saw a count, it was 14 military bases in northeastern Nigeria, and some of those are, little more than a bit of fence and some, kind of small houses. But some of those are proper military bases. There was one on the shores of Lake Chad where you had German donated patrol boats. Troops would come there from Chad, Niger, Cameroon. It was a major center, and they first they spied on it using handheld drones, and then they overran it and took away enormous amounts of weapons and supplies they reportedly gave back to the local population.
So if you
So
look
that's
at a map and see that they're kind of across now, Nigeria, Niger, Chad, what's their goal here? Do they want to build the equivalent of another caliphate in Africa?
Yeah, I think there's something like that. When something that people miss is when ISIS declared their caliphate, they didn't consider their caliphate only Iraq and Syria. They kind of had these sort of, in a way, very grandiose declaration that there was a province in West Africa and a province here and a province in Libya, and the West Africa province, as they call it, has gone pretty far. I think they've learned from some of ISIS's strategic errors. They haven't baited the West. If anything, they've benefited from the U.S.'s sort of shift away from counterterrorism as the big U.S. Military priority. And I think that you could say they're creating something like a territory where the Nigerian government, frankly, can't dislodge them and see some benefit of a kind of live and let live relationship.
So I was going to ask, what is the U.S. role here? I mean, have we essentially retreated, considered that the Boko Haram fight is over, and are we paying attention to this?
Well, I think there's definitely a shift, and the Pentagon will talk about it, a shift away from counterterrorism as our overriding priority to contesting great powers like China. And that means that you've seen a lot of drawbacks in support for counterterrorism missions in West Africa and elsewhere. I think we've cut troop levels by 10% in West Africa, if I've got that number right, which is, it's not huge, but when the U.S. does that, the Nigerians see that as well and say, well, if it's not a priority for the Americans, frankly, this is a part of our country that's not economically productive, where we've had a stalemate for years and years and years. And I think it sends a signal, rightly or wrongly, that the Nigerians themselves have deprioritized or can deprioritize this as a concern because the country has other challenges.
All right, Drew Hinshaw of the Wall Street Journal joining us via Skype from Poland tonight. Thanks so much.
Thank you.